Okay, guys, welcome to another iteration of the deep dive. Let's take a deep dive. On the deep dive, what we do is that we talk about stuff that you don't hear in the mainstream media at home. You don't hear about this in Jamaica because you know what? A lot of things are just left. They're not investigated. They're not said. And we also understand that there are certain institutions in the country that enjoys almost an unprecedented degree of deference. One of such institutions is the Jamaican judiciary. Um, and there is a reason for that deference with the Jamaican judiciary. Uh, Number one, the most vocal people in the country are the ones who are benefiting from the work of the judiciary. I want you to understand what I'm saying to you. The most vocal people, the people who are breaking the nation's laws, the people who are benefiting from crime, the people who are supporters of Jamaica's criminals, Jamaica's most vicious and violent criminals. They're the loudest. They're the loudest on all social media platforms. They're well implanted into what passes for uh, media in the country. And of course, they have mass support across all of the country. Now, let me hasten to say that this is not to say that the majority of people of the Jamaican people are criminals or criminal loving or criminal supporting. What I'm saying is there is a loud cross section of the Jamaican people who fundamentally support criminality, are extremely deferential to criminals, especially those affiliated with the dancehall culture, those who are uh, who are somehow seen as celebrities within the space. They are extremely deferential to these type of people, and so whether they're charged for rape or homicide or whatever, no matter what kind of serious felony they're charged with, there is a hue and cry for them to be released. You know, this is true across the board and has been true across the board. And I think when I was a little boy, I used to wonder when I read the stories about Three Finger Jack, and the stories clearly spoke about Three Finger Jack in a way that was almost reverential, not just deferential, but reverential. When the sad reality is that Three Finger Jack was a freaking criminal. Okay, Three Finger Jack, even though the history books, the Jamaican history books, sought to romanticize what Three Finger Jack does, a kind of a Robin Hood esque type of personality, if you will, and it romanticized it. Three Finger Jack was a criminal. Now we could talk about this criminality that Jamaica has fallen in love with and has been in love with. The Jamaicans, part of Jamaican culture has been to romanticize criminality. We know how Jamaicans have celebrated some of the most dangerous, some of the most violent, some of the most evil demons that have come out of the country, from Copper to Reagan to Sandokan to Starkey and the name George Flash and Jim Brown and all of those despicable demons. That's what they celebrate. That's what this underculture of Jamaicans celebrate. And it it when you add the dancehall mix to it, even when these demons, even when these most despicable creatures are duly convicted in a court of law, when a judge hears the evidence and a jury adjudicates, a jury decides that this person is guilty beyond a reasonable doubt, and is eventually convicted. The judges go to all lengths to find ways to mitigate the amount of time that these monsters are supposed to spend in prison. But it gets worse. If and when they decide to file an appeal, which is almost mandatory, they file an appeal no matter what, even when they don't have any additional evidence. They make outlandish claim about the police doing this and the prosecutor doing that. And that is usually enough to get the case overturned on appeal. Now, you have to conclude one or two things, or both. I don't know if you can do both, but one, you have to suspend reality and assume that the trial court is woefully incompetent, woefully inept, that the trial judges are woefully incompetent or inept, that they would allow cases to proceed, or a trial to have instances within the trial that are not that would compromise the constitutional right of a criminal defendant. That's on one hand. Or on the other hand, you would conclude, suspend reality again, suspend common sense, and conclude that the appellate court is so pristine, so immaculate, so good at what it does, that it can always extrapolate from some kind of malfeasance, some kind of mistake from the trial court's verdict, the decision of the trial court, that makes it necessary to overturn these verdicts. Now, I'm not asking you to suspend reality, but you're all capable of thinking for yourselves, right? So you have to ask yourselves, why are these people of means always, even when convicted for their crimes, always able to have their case overturned on appeal? Considering what I said earlier. And if you're not willing to suspend reality, if you're not willing to suspend common sense, if you're not willing to suspend your ability to think, then you have to ask the very next question in line to be asked. How much does it cost to buy a judge, or two or three? So by virtue of what I just said, it would seem then that the only people who can get justice, real justice, Jamaican style, are the people who are famous or well-to-do in our society. And so tonight we're going to just dig a little bit into what has been going on. And yesterday, we did, in our deep dive, we spoke about the situation the present administration found itself in going into the next general election. With crime notwithstanding lower this year, homicides per se, lower this year, the administration has that to point to. The economy is not bad, but it's hard for any administration to run on the economy in Jamaica, given Jamaica's situation in terms of the wholesale depreciation of the Jamaican dollar. and the ever increasing cost of living. And so, regardless of which political party holds power, it is hard for that party to run on the economy because, other than, say, a couple of items like, say, gasoline, which is a function of international markets, not fuel availability, uh, the prices of gasoline and gasoline products may go up a couple cents, a few or a dollar, or go down. But it's ever fluctuating. So that's not something, excuse me, that any administration can run on. So the fact that prices are always going up and there's literally no hope, regardless of who is in power, there's literally no hope of prices ever coming down. It's hard to run on the economy. And that makes it extremely difficult for the administration in power. As I said before, regardless of who is in power, it makes it increasingly difficult for that party to run on the economy when people do not feel it in their pocketbooks. And it's a near impossibility for people to feel an improvement in their lives, an improvement in their ability to send their children to school, and an improvement in their ability to find lunch money for their children. I spoke about this before. So, having said that, when a Jamaican electorate goes to the polls, it generally doesn't go to the polls to elect a party. It generally, the people in the middle, not the diehard laborites or the diehard comrades, the people who swing elections, the sane people who swing elections one way or the other, they really do not go into vote in a party. They literally go in to vote out a party that has not met their expectations. That has always been the Jamaican electorate. And we're going to talk about but we're going to get back to the judiciary. But before you do, can I just ask you, please, to subscribe to this channel if you like our content. Subscribe to the channel, please. And please, please, please share our videos. Give us a comment. Leave us a comment. Let us know what you think. And leave us a like if you like the content. It's very important to the algorithms. Thank you so much. Now, let's get into it. As I said before, we want to talk about the judiciary, so we're going to talk about the judiciary and the impact it is having in this fight that the country is immersed in. And for many of us, we believe that the crime fight is something that is supposed to be the purview of the police and the police alone. Now, in all fairness, a lot of people are making a contribution by calling the police, excuse me, the lines that are available to them for them to speak to the police in confidence without anybody knowing who they are. And those information the police are getting are extremely, extremely, extremely vital to the crime fight. But I want to point out the importance of other agencies within the government doing their part in this crime fight. It's very important. And tonight, I want to, again, delve a little bit deeper into the way the judiciary across the board is letting down the Jamaican people and making it extremely difficult for law enforcement to have any serious impact on the crime pandemic in our country. It is extremely difficult because the judiciary is not holding up its end of the bargain. The judiciary is taking advantage of this whole concept of independent judiciary and is using it as a cover to release violent offenders back onto the street. In many cases, a guy is charged with murder, he's arrested, and that puts to shame, to put to the lie that JFJ and Indicom will tell in order to gain favor with the criminal supporting part of the country and to get international funding. A guy will get charged for murder, and that guy will be arrested, and immediately by the time the officers who brought him to court walk out of court, that criminal is back on the street behind them, granted bail. And so that compromises the case, because now this murderer, this alleged murderer, can go and intimidate the witnesses or kill them. Okay? And in many cases, it has happened. Guy goes out, he picks up a gun, and he goes back and he commits another unaliving. And he gets bail, he commits another unaliving, another killing. He does it. And in one case we know of that we could speak to, the guy was held 5 separate times and 5 separate homicides that and the judge keep letting him back out, even though the Bail Act strictly stipulates that if the offender is likely to reoffend, he can be held without bail. If the offender is likely to interfere with witnesses, he should be held. If the offender is likely to flee the jurisdiction, he can be denied bail. All of those things and more are cornerstones within the Bail Act that covers any judge that decides, look, this person is a danger to the society, and as such, I am not going to turn this person loose. But in many cases, guys charged with murder over and over and over and over on the street with 4 separate murders awaiting trial. In many cases, even though the case is strong, the lawyers understand that if they drag out those cases, and the judges are all for it, if they drag out those cases, they can literally drag it out to 4, 5, 6, 7 years and then claim that their client's constitutional right is being breached and violated, and so the case should be thrown out. In fact, this is a strategy that the criminal lawyers are using. And there's no legislation that would say, all right, this case has to be tried within 3 years. Murder case should be tried within 3 years. It should, right? But there's no law making it so. Yeah? Or there's no law that says, you know what, if this is what the lawyer is doing, if the defense is doing this, then it's going to seriously impugn your affect your client's chances. So the laws are not keeping up with the criminals and their lawyers. And the judges are a part of the scam. The judges are a part of the scam. Listen, folks, Jamaica is facing a homicide crisis of unprecedented proportions, with crime rates that are far exceed international thresholds for what constitute a violent epidemic. The United Nations defines a homicide pandemic as 10 murders per 100,000 persons. Jamaica, with an average homicide rate of 47 per 100,000, is nearly 5 times above the UN standard, placing the nation among the most violent in the world. Those are facts. While numerous socio-economic and cultural factors contribute to this crisis, one of the most pressing and overlooked issues is the role of the judiciary in perpetuating the cycle of violence. The Jamaican justice system has adopted an approach that prioritizes the rights of alleged and convicted criminals over those of their innocent victims. And yes, in many cases, a lot of the people murdered are innocent victims. This philosophy manifests in lenient bail policies I spoke about, inadequate sentencing for convicted murderers, and an overall failure to account for the realities of crime in the country. We must address these issues. And while the presumption of innocence is a cornerstone of democratic legal systems. The Jamaican judiciary's excessive leniency in granting bail to individuals accused of violent crimes over and over before trial, even as they violate the terms of their bail, has had devastating consequences to our country and has not been addressed because of a misguided and misplaced faith in a judicial system that has not kept faith with law-abiding Jamaican citizens. And let me hurry to say that it's not just on with violent crimes. It's not just violent crimes, but I'm going to come back to that. When accused murderers are granted bail, excuse me, they frequently reoffend, further contributing to the country's high homicide rate. I spoke about that earlier. This is what's been going on. Murderers on bail committing more murders and more murders. The lack of a structured and consistent policy on pretrial detention for violent offenders undermines efforts to curb crime and places law-abiding citizens at unnecessary risk. This has been happening for decades. In many cases, individuals charged with murder, even repeat offenders, are allowed back on the streets without adequate monitoring or restrictions. In many cases, as I said, a guy killing people and out 5 separate times still haven't faced trial. Now, when this happens, it weakens public confidence in the justice system. There's no question about that. But even worse than that, and equally concerning, is the judiciary's approach to sentencing. Convicted murderers in Jamaica often receive sentences that are grossly inadequate given the severity of their crimes. Many are released back into society after serving relatively short prison terms. Guys are out on the street doing 3 and 4 years for murder, reinforcing a perception of impunity. So it's no wonder that the crime rate is as it is, or when the nation have over 1,000 murder, we celebrating that as improvement. The leniency displayed in sentencing fails to serve as a deterrent and instead incentivizes further criminal behavior, violent behavior. The issue is exacerbated by the Court of Appeal's failure to adhere to stare decisis, the legal principle that requires courts to follow precedents set in previous rulings. The disregard for established legal principles leads to unpredictable and often contradictory judicial outcomes, further eroding public trust in the system. So, hey, let me ask you this. When you hear about people not reporting crimes to the police, people taking matters into their own hands when they are aggrieved, people committing jungle justice by killing individuals they suspect or they know have committed a crime, if they can. And usually, a lot of times, these are innocent people or people of unsound mind. When you hear of police extrajudicial killings, to the extent that occur, you have to look at the judicial branch of government. You have to look at the judicial branch of government. These are all reasons why these things happen. So when we talk about these judicial outcomes further eroding public trust in the system, these are the consequences. Jungle justice, extrajudicial killings to the extent they occur, people not reporting matters to the police, people not showing up to testify in court. It goes on and on and on and on. And this must be placed at the feet of these judges who ignore the law the laws in our country usurp the sentencing laws and forces up on the Jamaican people their lenient, extra lenient sentences, and lean and lie and use the cover of judicial independence to do as they please and to impose these crazy, stupid, lenient sentences on the most violent offenders, placing the lives of innocent Jamaicans at continued risks. When judges issue rulings based on personal discretion rather than an established legal precedence, the judiciary becomes an agent of chaos rather than a pillar of justice. At all levels of the judiciary, there is a glaring disconnect from the realities of crime and violence in our country. This disconnect is not limited to violent offenses. It extends to other areas of public safety, such as road laws and traffic regulations. Reckless driving. You all seen the taxi drivers overtaking and speeding around corners, overtaking around corners. Reckless driving, disregard for road safety laws, and the lack of enforcement mechanisms have led to countless preventable deaths and injuries. Yet, judicial responses remain weak, with penalties that fail to serve as effective deterrents. The broader implication of this judicial detachment is a system that is failing to serve its core purpose, the protection of society. A judiciary that operates in isolation from the realities on the ground is not only ineffective, but complicit. Let me say that again. It is complicit in perpetuating the crime culture in our country. Addressing Jamaica's crime crisis requires urgent judicial review and reform. The justice system must strike a balance.
For mercy.
Just the community of
Must strike a balance. And this includes the following: reforming bail policies. Stricter regulations must be imposed to prevent violent offenders from being granted bail, particularly those accused of murder or other serious crimes. We just got to stop it. We need strengthening sentencing guidelines. Mandatory minimum sentences, regardless of what you may hear, for violent crimes should be established to ensure that convicted criminals serve appropriate prison terms. Enforcing stare decisis. The Court of Appeal must adhere to established legal precedents to promote consistency and accountability in judicial decisions. And there must be, excuse me, an enhancement of judicial accountability. Judges must be held responsible for rulings that contribute to public endangerment, with mechanisms for review and oversight. Public safety considerations. The judiciary must align its decisions with broader national security objectives. Recognizing the role of judicial rulings in shaping crime trends. The Jamaican courts cannot divorce itself from the fight that the country is in and pretend to be a social service. Jamaica cannot afford to continue on its current trajectory. The judiciary must recognize that its decisions have real consequences and that justice must not only be done, but seem to be done. Until meaningful reforms are enacted, the crime crisis will persist, and you people will continue to blame the police. It will continue undermining national stability and eroding public trust in the legal system. But understand this, it is not the role of the police. It is not the job of the police only. And the police have been removing these miscreants from the street for decades and decades and decades. But the criminal justice system, the judiciary, has been acting as a revolving door for the highest levels of criminality at all levels, be it white collar or regular violent offenders. The courts have been a willing participant, acting in many cases as if they're defense attorneys for the most violent offenders in our country. This has been going on for decades and decades and decades since the so-called independence of our nation. And you know, I wanted to bring to your attention. Here's a situation, and I talked about it's not just violent offenders. Excuse me. It's not just with violent offenders, but we talk about with the miscreants, who the taxi operators, the drivers on the road who care nothing about the road traffic laws. They don't care. They overtake around corners. They overtake downhill, uphill, around blind corners where they can't see. They go around anyway. They overtake on sidewalks. They overtake on soft shoulders. They don't care. Taxi operators and minibus drivers. But when they do act recklessly, which is their modus operandi, they don't know how to operate as normal human beings. And of course, again, the population shares some responsibility for that, because there are elements in the country that actually love this kind of lawlessness. They record it. Even some of them live overseas, and when they go home and they take these modes of transportation, they record it. They celebrate it. Even though they can't, none of that happens in the United States. It doesn't. Can't. None of it that happened in London or England, wherever in England they live, or Canada. Can't. If they live in Germany, can't. So the only place, if they're in Barbados, it can't. Wherever they are, it's only in Jamaica that that type of behavior is tolerated. That type of lawlessness is tolerated. And look, I'm not mad at the lawyers who are working to protect their clients. The lawyers have a duty. They have a sacred duty to defend their clients within the system. So I'm not mad at the lawyers who defend. But I want to bring to you a couple of lawyers who defended one such taxi driver who
victims. So we went into Macaulay High.
Sorry, started this a little bit prematurely, but want to just bring to your attention two lawyers who actually defended a reckless taxi driver whose recklessness caused the life of not one, not two, not three, not four, but 5 innocent people that he was entrusted, who entrusted him with their lives. And the lawyers make the case, which you will hear, that he was a deacon in the church. The lawyers make the case that he's the salt of the earth, literally. Ha! They made the case that this guy was a solid foundational rock of piousness and law abiding. And so they went, when he's to be sentenced, they went and they got people to sign off that this guy was the salt of the earth. The lawyer will tell you he was the salt of the earth. And again, I don't fault attorneys who fight and use the system, a weak, feckless system that caters to the worst actors.
White House formed where persons lost their lives.
And not only that, he asks for mercy on his behalf. He is really a good, solid, upright person. He's a loving dad. He's a great husband, I'm told. He is the head deacon for the Belmont Assembly Adventist Church. So this is someone you could regard as the salt of the earth, an upstanding, responsible person who can be emulated by everyone. Prior to this, his reputation and his record was.
Take a moment of silence for those decedents. But you hear what this fool said? He said, this is a person that can be emulated. Here's a guy who literally sacrificed the lives of 5 people that were entrusted to his care. And this fool stands in front of a microphone and said that this is a guy that can be emulated. This is the mindset I'm talking about. He can be emulated. So any reckless taxi operator who is entrusted with the life of his or her passengers can do exactly what he did. And when he unalives 5 or 6 or 4 or 3 or whatever amount of people he unalives, his lawyer or her lawyer can just go ahead and get some criminal loving people. You give them a drink, or you give them one curry goat, or you give them one beer, or one stick of weed. They will sign a petition saying that you are the best person, head deacon, salt of the earth, someone to be emulated. How much further is the country going to sink? How much further is the country going to sink into this nonsensical bullshit? It's what it is. Nonsensical bullshit. He wasn't done. They weren't done.
Pristine. And so this is a blot that he has not done on his record, but he is trying to ensure that the victims and their families don't feel insulted or left out. So he's trying to make compensation, and they still.
Well, for those of you who don't know the full story, you could look it up. But there were certain little slaps on his wrist. I'm not going to go into the point. But the bottom line is, this dude is now walking the streets. He's gotten a non-custodial sentence, which means 0 time in prison for the recklessness, the dangerous driving that led to the death of 5 innocent individuals. And in a weird kind of preemptive stance, if you will, his really foolish lawyer is saying that the defendant doesn't want that the family of the deceased people to be offended. But the question is, how else could these people feel in a system that has so let them down, in a system that has so betrayed them? This is abject betrayal by a judicial system that takes unto itself a mindset that it is above anybody's supervision. The judiciary in Jamaica is of the mindset that it is above anyone questioning it. It has taken the whole notion of independent judiciary to mean unaccountable judiciary. And so this is what has been plaguing Jamaica. Because Jamaican people love to hero worship. Vast majority of the people love to hero worship. And they love to believe in demigods. So if a person have a little education or little popularity gained by spewing some filthy lyrics in a dance hall, that person is held to a higher standard. Can't touch them, can't talk to them, they can do no wrong. They're not held to any standard of accountability. And so while this is happening, the Jamaican people are going to, the real salt of the earth, not the salt of the earth that takes the life of 5 innocent people, but the real salt of the earth, the ordinary good and decent people, not the loudest yellers, the real salt of the earth, like my grandfather, my grandparents, my uncles, my aunts, and the many people I have met across the length and breadth of Jamaica, the real decent people. Not talking about the entitled never circumcised, the real Jamaicans, the real people who makes one proud to say I'm Jamaican, the salt of the earth. Those are the people who are being disenfranchised. Now, the final thing I'm gonna say is this attorney said he hopes that his client hoped that the family members of the decedents will not feel insulted. Well, they did. And they made their feelings known. One female family member, she was so gracious, so gracious. She said it was a slap in the face for her as a family member of one decedent. And that she wasn't expecting that the accused would have gotten the maximum sentence. But to give him a non-custodial sentence was a slap in the face to all of them. So in reality, these two lawyers stood before the microphones and lied that the family members, even the family members, didn't want him to get a custodial sentence. It's a lie. It was a bold-faced lie. But hey, anything or anything. This has been the deep dive. This has been the deep dive. Thank you. Thank you for spending your time with me. And I appreciate you. Like the channel, share the content. Please share the videos, leave us a comment. Tell us exactly how you feel, whether you agree with our commentary or not. We appreciate it, and we look forward to hearing from you. Thank you so much.